Nate Thomas got the start for the Cowboys in week 5. Should he remain the starter? We will get to that next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we are reviewing our show notes from the Cowboys Week 5 win over the Jets. Landon, let's talk about the Cowboys offensive line in this game. Nate Thomas got to start, Brock Hoffman at right guard. You had TJ Bassett right guard, Brock Hoffman at center. No Tyler Smith. How did you think the offensive line performed?
Yeah, once they announced that Tyler Smith wasn't going to be playing in this game with the knee tendonitis, it really was nerve-wracking, right? It's just you're down 4 starters, you're basically down to your 5th guy, and probably maybe no offense to Terrence Steele, but obviously your least talented offensive lineman, I think, or at least the pedigree-wise, certainly. And so, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of fear that the Cowboys just weren't going to be able to execute, that it was going to feel a lot like last year, right, when the Cowboys couldn't effectively run the football, and so the game would get kind of boxed in, especially with Gardner on the outside. I'm sorry, with Sauce, with Sauce on the outside against Pickens. I was worried that the game would be, like, in that sense, just very short, very difficult and hard to move the ball, and kind of how it did feel in those first few drives of the second half, right? It just like it would be a struggle. But the Cowboys were able to very easily overcome it despite all the injuries at offensive line. And it all came down to execution, right? Like it wasn't necessarily that you saw guys like being pancaked, like when Booker was out there, or when you see Tyler Smith, you didn't see bodies on the floor necessarily. But again, the thing that we kind of talked about over and over again with this Clayton Adams run game is it's about angles. It's about executing. Mm-hmm. It's about attacking guys, not straight on, not attacking Quinnen Williams head up, because you're going to lose that one-on-one matchup against the superior athlete, but attacking him from his side or unexpectedly, or double teaming him when he's not expecting him. And I think that they were very effective at both the run and the pass game in having good scheme and having a good plan for solving problems like Quinnen Williams inside. And then the wherewithal to execute it. And I think that's really where you worry, is that a lot of these guys don't have experience. Akeem Adeniji coming in, playing guard last minute. You just don't know how this is all going to work out. And, next to 2 guys who have some experience, but not a ton, the fact that they were all kind of working together seamlessly, and especially with kind of complicated folding power and counter moves, counter runs, it was really, really, really impressive. And hats off to Clayton Adams, Connor Riley, and Brian Schottenheimer for all of that.
I want to dive into Nate Thomas a little bit more, but we have to address an elephant in the room right now. If you're watching with us on YouTube or wherever you watch this podcast, I get the Steelers stuff. Listen, the house is under construction. I'm doing some traveling, using my cousin's office. So forgive me for the Steelers background. I know that the jokes are coming. I can handle it. Whatever.
For our podcasters at home, he's got 3 incredible Pittsburgh Steelers hanging from his wall, much like the Cowboys ones he has at home. But it was obviously the first thing I noticed when he started.
Nobody's going to believe me, so it's fine. It's not my house. Let's talk about Nate Thomas, because I think initially when I was watching this game, performed well, right? Didn't give up any big sacks. I think when you go back and watch the tapes, you can see a couple times where he got beat quickly off the line of scrimmage. There were some run snaps where he wasn't maybe on time. But again, we're putting this all through the prism of like, hey, this is a backup left tackle who's making his first NFL start. I thought he played well from that perspective, but I still think we've got a ways to go before we're talking about him taking Tyler Guyton or Terrence Steele's job.
Yeah, listen, when it's early on, it's not teach tape, right? You're going to get beat, but it's about – learn. I mean, you hear it from offensive line coaches and offensive linemen all the time. You got to learn how to clip, trip, and grab, right? And how to do it, get away with it, because early on you're going to get beat a lot. And I think that was the thing with Thomas, is that he was battling. And then I think that's all that you can ask for, is that there were certainly times when he was being beat cleanly. But there are other times when he got beat and he was able to get a hand on him the last minute, or get to where he needed to last second. So he was doing the job effectively, even if it didn't always look pretty. And I agree. Like I do think despite it not being the cleanest game for him, he's showing you again every single step of the way, every opportunity you're giving him, he's showing you that he's growing a little bit more. I mean, this week he's back out at left tackle. He's been bouncing back and forth between right and left tackle and really kind of not missing too much of a beat. I just think that he's earned the opportunity to get some snaps even when Guyton comes back. And I don't know that that's at the expense of Guyton. We can have a conversation about that. But I think that he maybe with Terrence Steele, you can start looking at giving him a series here or there, just because he's clearly a guy that you're going to want to look to as your future. And he looks like he's ready to play right now.
Where do you think his best spot is at? Do you think it's as a left tackle, right tackle? They clearly didn't love him at guard last year. Where do you think he belongs?
I think he's a tackle. I mean, look, if you've got a guy who can handle it physically, and he's big and strong like that, you want that kind of advantage on your edge, I think. And he's shown that he's got the athletic ability, in my opinion. It's just about technique and timing and stuff. I think he's got the athletic ability that you want, especially at right tackle, even though that line's being blurred more and more as the years go on. I think he's a tackle, and it's valuable to have guys like that. I think there's a reason that they didn't want to just limit him to playing guard. I bet he could still go kick in and play guard if you needed him to. But I just don't know that, he's going to be as good a guard if he concentrated at that position as like TJ Bass or one of these other interior guys that you've got.
One more note on the offense before we switch gears and look at the defense. Ryan Flournoy had 100 yards in the first half of this game. Actually, Javonte Williams and Ryan Flournoy were the first Cowboy teammates ever to have 100 rushing yards and 100 receiving yards in the first half, which is, it's kind of incredible. Javonte Williams and Ryan Flournoy, like all these great running backs and receivers, and it's those guys that did it.
I'm gonna believe you because you're currently wearing a Football Reference T-shirt,
yes,
so it seems like you would have that information at hand.
Well, it's hard to believe with Flournoy. Like not that long ago, the Cowboys released him like a month ago for Trevor Keegan, who actually played some snaps at left guard in this game, and now all of a sudden he was the second best receiver on the field. Where does he slot in when CeeDee Lamb comes back, when Kevontae Turpin comes back in, frankly, when Jonathan Mingo is healthy enough to go?
Yeah, you and I have talked about this before, but I kind of put Turpin in his own little silo, right? Like, I mean, I think he's going to get his snaps and his opportunities no matter who's out there. And I think that that's a separate affair from the rest of the wide receiver hierarchy, right? But I think for what we've seen in Flournoy, like I think at this point, he's got to start eating into a couple of Tolbert snaps just because of the production you see. I think Tolbert's not played poorly by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's also, played well as a kind of utility edge blocker, as a guy who makes the big play, at the end of the game against the Packers, right? I think he's still capable of doing that, but I think that Flournoy is a guy that you probably want to try to get the ball to. And clearly the Cowboys agree. Like, I mean, if you remember the first play of the game, it wasn't necessarily successful. The first play of the game was a little jet sweep reverse to Flournoy. So I do think that he probably has some more after the catch ability than what you've seen in Tolbert. And it's going to be interesting when Mingo comes back, because I do think that Mingo is a guy that you're probably going to want to use pretty similarly to Flournoy. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of mix everyone in together, because Mingo was another guy who was really showing out in training camp. And now that we've seen Flournoy translated, I'm interested to see if Mingo can as well.
And I'm interested when CeeDee Lamb comes back. Do they play Pickens and Mingo on the outside just to give them a lot of speed and size, and that way it allows Lamb to have more opportunities in the middle? Or do we see Flournoy get that spot? It's a good problem to have. These are millionaire problems. Absolutely. Let's talk about the Cowboys defense, because they did show some signs of life, Landon, here in Week 5 against the Jets. We'll discuss that and more next. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Every day we make decisions, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. PrizePicks is such a fun and simple way to add more excitement to football. All you have to do is pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley's rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. I love how quick it is. You can make lineups in under a minute. It's also fun to follow some other players as the games are going on, besides just your Dallas Cowboys, of course. So download the PrizePicks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That is promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Landon, let's talk about the Cowboys defense because they did play better in this game. We saw some better tackling, at least after the first drive. We saw a better pass rush. What were you the most encouraged about?
It's funny. First of all, I'm encouraged by the fact that we both didn't just groan when we said that we had to talk about the Cowboys defense, which is an improvement on the last few weeks to be sure. I think the first thing that that kind of immediately stuck out was the difference in coverage. Right? They talked about the fact that publicly that Trayvon had gone to the coaching staff and requested more man coverage. And they did play more man coverage. They doubled the amount of man coverage they played, up to I think 11%. Was what I saw on a couple of different sites. And it was interesting too because if you really kind of break it down a little bit further than that, I actually tweeted about this earlier. The Cowboys kind of did so at the cost of some of their more vertical siloed coverages, right? Their cover threes, their cover fours. That's where you saw the noticeable drop, and then the increase that they actually they got besides just the cover one was a pretty noticeable increase in cover two, and I think this is twofold, and I credit John Owning. Thank you so much for one of these two. The first was for me. I think that they leveraged cover two because it's a coverage that they can be a little bit more aggressive and keep eyes up front to still watch to make sure that Fields is not squirting out the front of the pocket and getting huge gains. We talked about how that was a really big part of the Jets offense in some of these games, and the Cowboys had to find a way to limit that, right? But John Owning also pointed out that obviously with cover one, but also in cover two, because of where the coverage is and because corners have flat responsibility, it provides them the opportunity to get up and get physical with the receivers a little bit more while still being able to fill their role of covering in the flats. And I think that's, allows guys like Diggs and Bland to kind of play a style of football that they're used to playing instead of kind of just having to react in off coverage, even though I think Bland's a better off coverage guy than Diggs is. But I think that for Diggs specifically, I think it really helped, and I think he played some of his best football this last week. And if they can play with something close to this sort of mix, which again, I even said this week was not the week to go through a bunch of man coverage. So maybe they even step the man coverage up a little bit more this week against the Panthers. I do think that you hopefully we'll see some better improvement, and I think there's another element that we can talk about just a sec.
Yeah, I want to talk about the pass rush because I thought, honestly, this might have been the best I've ever seen Dante Fowler look. And whether it was that he just had a beat on the Jets snap count, whether it was, Ola Fashanu, who he was going up against at left tackle, whatever it was, Fowler played unbelievable. And if you're going to get that Fowler every single week, I'm just not going to be that concerned about the pass rush. I think the other thing that was interesting is that James Houston continues to produce unlimited snaps. Now, I do think, I wonder if there's a part where you get too many snaps for James Houston and you get some diminishing returns. But I do think, I think there's a limit there. But I do think between Fowler and Houston, they gave you enough in this game to be encouraged moving forward.
Yeah, it's tough because, you just can't afford to play with too many 240-pound defensive ends because of obviously the running issue. And look at the results, right? The Cowboys were run over by Breece Hall for 115 yards, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, I mean, it certainly is a situation where there's a reason why they haven't been wanting to play these guys all the time is because there is some give and take there. So I do think the Cowboys have to find a way to give James Houston more snaps. We have to find that upper limit of that ceiling as for right now, because I think if Fowler is going to play the way that he is, then that is certainly helpful. But if you're going to get kind of up and down Fowler, then you need to find another way to get James Houston going. Look, the Cowboys were the number one team. You and I were just talking about this before the game. According to Next Gen Stats, the Cowboys were the number one team in Week 5 in team average get off. So I think that the improvements they made are helping the pass rush get off the football, but that hasn't necessarily been the problem that so much. It's because we've seen them get a lot of pressures, but not convert it into a sack or not convert it into production that's noticeable. Hopefully now that you're seeing the coverage kind of reflect the defensive back skills, it's going to give them a little bit longer to make the quarterback think about it. And then hopefully the increase in stunts and twists that we saw this week as well, I think really helped get some folks home. And I think that's something that the Cowboys can build on a little bit.
I also hate to say this, but probably your least effective pass rusher, Mosher and Landon, didn't play in this game, and I wonder if that's why you got some more. But again, it's a trade-off because you got ran on in this game, and I think like against Carolina this week, assuming Landon's healthy enough, you're going to want him out there, especially on early downs, because Rico Dowdle, and we'll see if Chuba Hubbard plays. You're going to want that guy on the field because he can set the edge a little bit. It still feels like they're tinkering with this defensive line. They're not quite sure who, how to distribute the snaps. We didn't even mention Jadeveon Clowney or Sam Williams. It's a work in progress, but at least we saw some flashes of what they can do as pass rushers when you get the right guys in the field.
Yeah, and it really helps to have a guy like Osa Odigizua playing the way he is right now too, because he's playing really, really fantastic, especially in the pass rush inside. So it's certainly going to help to make this defensive end rotation look better as they sort of kind of figure out what's going on. And listen, here's the other thing. Donovan Ezraku continuing to be a solid player in the run is going to give him more opportunities, and he's just getting better and better each week. So I do have a hope that he's going to come on in these coming weeks, but it's just been a slow process so far for these guys, and it's been a slow growth process.
One more thing I wanted to mention, and we actually mentioned this on our Monday show about Shamar James. He made a bunch of tackles in this game. And listen, I'm happy that he's been on the field. I'm happy that he's making all these tackles. I think Cowboy fans maybe got a little bit too excited. You're watching the tape, and it's a lot of tackles, like 9-10 yards down the field. And again, you're happy that he's not missing these tackles. But now it's, okay, he's got to start recognizing things a little bit sooner. And so rather than a 9-yard gain, it's a 5-yard gain. Or you're taking away some of these underneath passes to the tight end. We saw some flashes there, but he still has a long ways to go.
Yeah, we've seen other guys to come through here, and John Owning reminded me Jalen Smith was another guy that used to get a bunch of tackles, and so it's about where you're tackling them, right? And I think that was the issue. That was the issue is that he was the guy making the tackle on the 16-yard carry up the gut by Breece Hall. So that's not exactly a resounding endorsement of Shamar James' play, but it's not. But it's not bad either. He's making these tackles. He's not missing tackles, so that's nice.
It's most teams aren't starting a 5th-round pick at linebacker during their 5th game of the season, right? So I just want to say, just as Bill Parcells used to say, put the anointing oil away for a little bit. Like I think James is going to be okay. Let's not make it a bigger deal than what it is.
And the same with Leofau, who made a play and looked good at certain points, but obviously also had some real struggles and was part of the problem at certain points as well.
All right, let's talk about some trade targets. Now that the Cowboys are officially at 500 because of this stupid tie, could they maybe make a big move on defense to improve that unit? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick awards than anyone else, from footwork to breathwork. Athletes sweat all of the details, and Mazda brings the same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make your everyday drives feel like anything but, with smooth handling to intuitive controls. And with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. The NFL season is finally here. We're already going into week 6. It's unbelievable. But for your second listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler the Madman Rowland gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you to the barbershop to get the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. All right, Landon, the Cowboys are 2-2-1, which is not a great record after the first 5 games, but with every team in the NFC having at least one loss, you're really not that far away. You're 1.5 games back from the top-ranked team in the conference. Is now the time for the Cowboys to consider starting to maybe make a move on defense so that they do have a real shot to make the postseason this year?
I mean, I think I think right now you're looking at who your options could be, but I still don't think you've made the decision to actually go forward, right? Like, I think we talked about it. You still got to win this Carolina game. And then I think that puts you in a spot where you feel comfortable about, having a team that might be good enough to actually improve the defense enough to make you feel like you could really make a run if you even make the playoffs, right? Which it is certainly not a guarantee. Even if you win this game in Carolina, that you're making the playoffs. Even if you go on a run, it's an uphill climb, and the teams you've got some teams ahead of you to get ahead of. So, but I also think that there are. I mean, I was talking to you about this a couple weeks ago. I don't think that there are any truly great teams in the NFL right now, right? I think the Lions are probably one of the better close-looking teams that we've seen, but the Cowboys have already played the Packers, who've been crowned at one point the best team in the NFL. The Eagles, the Cowboys played a close game too, and honestly, they look extremely flawed to me, especially after what we saw last week. So I don't think that this is so far outside the realm of possibility that if you find a deal where you can get a young enough player, that a trade makes some sense for now and the future.
That's the key. I just don't have a lot of interest in flipping like a 4th-round pick or a 5th-round pick for a 1 or even 2-year rental. Like, it's just not that appealing to me. If they're going to trade for somebody, I would actually be okay giving up a little bit more for a guy that you feel like could be part of the solution long-term. And like, we can discuss the names, but like one of the names, like Trey Hendrickson, right? Trey Hendrickson's on a 1-year deal. He's going to want a big contract. He was really, really good last week for the Bengals, and you might be able to get him for a 2nd-round pick. But do you want to be, spending a 2nd-round pick and giving him a big contract? I'm not opposed to it, but I would rather see them go after someone like Will McDonald, who they just played this week against the Jets. He's got an 81 pass rush grade, one of the top guys in the league, and actually played really well last year under Aaron Whitecotton, the Cowboys' current defensive line coach. Like, that's somebody I could see you bringing in, you pairing with Donovan Ezeraku and Marshawn Nealand, and that's what your future of your defensive ends looks like moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes a lot of sense. It lines up because the familiarity there with your defensive line coach, he's kind of exactly what you need, as a guy who can get after the quarterback. He just gives you that edge that you're looking for to kind of speed up the clock a little bit. We're trying to just turn the screws a little bit to make adjustments in both spots, and hopefully small improvements together kind of just start some positive momentum in the pass coverage. I think having a guy like that could certainly help. And look, let's say you want to split the difference or not even split the difference, but like swing for the fences. Obviously the big name that we could talk about is a guy like Max Crosby, who plays for the Vegas Raiders. I mean, he's 28 years old, so I think that he's still young enough that if you wanted to go trade and then, he's on a long-term deal, or if you want to extend him or something, you don't feel bad about that because he's been a guy that has played a ton, just an absolute outrageous number of snaps without missing time over the last few years. And I think that, it makes some sense, but I think you've got to look at guys that has still enough, length on their careers that it's not just a situation where you're trading for him and hoping that he gives you something over the next 2 years, and then you're gonna have to sign him again. Like you want a guy that can be like a more cornerstone foundational piece of your defense if you're going to give up big assets at this point.
And that's the hard part, is there's just not that many of those guys out there. Most teams aren't giving them away. I mean, I was even looking at like the safety room. Minka Fitzpatrick has already been traded once this year, but like if Miami continues to struggle, could Minka be a guy that you want? I don't know. His contract's pretty big for a safety. He's also, I don't know, the best fit in Eberflus's defense. We mentioned someone like Roquan Smith, but Roquan Smith is 28 and a half years old. He's already looking like he's on the back half of his career. Yeah. It's going to be a struggle. So that's where I wouldn't be surprised if they're flipping late round picks for guys I think are marginal improvements, but I don't see some big trade coming down the pipeline here.
Yeah, and look, I mean, marginal improvement is still improvement. If you get a couple of those guys, like if you make 2 of those trades and improve your linebacker core and your defensive line, I think that can make marked improvement on this team. And then on top of the fact that you're getting a couple of guys back who, I mean, you're obviously putting a lot on DeMarvion Overshown and some of these other guys to come back and play incredible football. But if you could get a couple other guys to just lighten that load a little bit, enough small improvements can get enough things going. And as the team learns the defense a little bit better, hopefully there can be enough combined improvements to get somewhere close to, like we said, middle of the pack on defense. That's all you need to give yourself a shot with this offense that did what they did against the Jets without almost all their starting offensive line and their best player on the team. So give the offense a chance this year. I think you can do it by swinging big or by getting a lot of singles.
And I hate to say this, but I know the way Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones think. They're going to think the additions of Savon Ravel and Josh Butler and DeMarvion Overshown, that's their big improvements that are going to happen in the second half of the year. I don't know if the Cowboys should expect that much from those 3 guys, but I would cautious people thinking that Cowboys are going to make a big move here before the deadline. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcast. We are free and available on all platforms. He is Landon McCool. I am Marcus Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.